What's going on, y'all? All right, so today we are going to be talking about a few different things. First is I'm talking about my first overnight trade, how I made close to $3,000. In that trade, only used roughly around four contracts on NQ, NASDAQ. Next thing we're going to talk about is just some key things that I went through as a trader and what I'm still going through as a trader, trying to get over the humps, trying to get past those specific things that hinder me from being more profitable than I already am. And then third thing is we're just going to go over some Q&A, some questions that people have um, to try to help you guys out. Because a lot of people think that you have to just sit on the chart all day, every day, which is not true at all. I technically only need about 30 minutes of your time to help you get in some plays, help you make some profits, and then go from there. So first thing we'll do is we'll go into um, the actual trade breakdown of my overnight trade, tell you guys why I got in it, where my entry was, different things of that nature, and then go into what I could have done better, if I could have held it longer, what I did to improve, what I can do to improve on the actual trade itself. So let's hop into it. All right, here we are. So we're gonna go ahead and break down what we have here. Um, and what's crazy is I've gradually moved to the 15-minute and the 30-minute time frame and not the 1 minute. And the reason why I moved to those time frames is because I'm starting to see the overall average of the candlesticks instead of making a decision on a 1 minute. And a 1 minute, I feel like you can make a decision based off of if you want a quick entry, quick exit. That might help you out to make you some profits depending on how many contracts you're trading with. You can make, $1,000 to $2,000 to $3,000 inside of the market on the 1 minute time frame. But since I own couple other businesses, I am not going to be sitting on the chart as long. I do have my morning calls from 9 to 11 every single morning with all the students. And I take all the plays typically around that time, and then I hop off the charts. If I'm still in a play, most likely I'll just let the play happen and then just go from there. So we'll get right into it. But right now, as you can see, what I'm going to do is just erase this stuff off of my chart. No worries on that end. I can just go ahead and redraw it. All right. What we'll do, we'll get that erased. So first things first is the main thing I start with is I start with support and resistance, figuring out which way I need to go on support and resistance, figuring out which way that I need to draw my trend lines and different things of that nature. So we have a super clear chart. I'll typically start on the higher time frame and then work my way down. But since we have the 30-minute up right now, I'll just go ahead and start with that and then I'll work my way back up and then back down. So we do have support and resistance right here. And support and resistance is basically you'll mark that after the change of direction. Okay. So the change of direction here is once the market goes up and then it stops, goes down, comes back up, and then start to create these support and resistance levels. Right. So we have support here on the bottom, resistance here on the top. Right. And the first thing that we look for right after that is we just look for a few trend lines. But I'm gonna go ahead and go to the higher time frame, mark up my trend lines, figure out which way I need to go on that route. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and go to the 4 hour. We're gonna see which way the market is essentially going. All right, we are in a uptrend. Have been in a uptrend on Nasdaq NQ since looks like April 21st, 25. So here all the way up. We were down as looks like a low of 17666.50. Uh, so we'll go ahead and use our rate tool to mark up our trend lines to figure out which way we need to go on this one. All right, there's one trend line there. Even if we marked one here, it would come up and it would just cross, which means that we're not going to go ahead and mark that. We're going to go to the scroll up on the chart here, and we see another B point that we can connect to another point here on the actual chart itself. All right, and the market is currently closed right now. I am going over a trade that I took. What was it? Friday? No, Thursday. Yeah, it was Thursday night, going into Friday morning. So we have that there. Second thing is we're gonna go down to the 1 hour, see if there's another trend line that we can draw and try to fix this one to make it a little bit more precise. And I'm gonna go ahead and draw the trend line that I drew um, for the play that I got in, just to kind of give you guys a glimpse of what it can look like. And I'm going to make that trend line a different color. Make it actually, let's just make it red. Um no, let's not make it red. Let's make it blue. About that, right? So blue is the trend line that I drew on Friday before this big drop down happened. And then we'll go into where I initially got into the play. So we'll drop down in the 45 minutes, see if there's anything else we can draw. And I'm just drawing this for current price action right now. I'm gonna switch that to green because that is not the line that I had. These green lines are all lines that are will be for current. Actually, when the market open back up today at 6 p.m., we'll see if this is going to continue down, or if it's going to continue back up off of the bounce of the trend line. All right, so what we have here is just our trend lines here. This is our current price action trend line, and this is actual the trend line that we had on Thursday when I took the play overnight. All right, so let's go over a few things, right? We're looking for confirmations. First thing I always look for when I am getting in a play or wanting to set up a play, um, especially if it's a long play, I'll look for support and resistance. Like we drew at the beginning. Very first thing was support and resistance. So we have support down here, which is typically what I like to call the floor, and then the resistance is typically what I like to call the ceiling. So every time we have a break off of support, it goes back up to resistance, and then eventually makes its way back down to support, back up to resistance, back down, and then back up, right? So that's the first confirmation. Second confirmation is we are looking for a break of resistance or support, right? So as of right now, what we currently have and what we had on Thursday before we entered the play was a break of resistance. And this actually happened Wednesday. So we're just looking for the break. And remember, this is on a 45-minute chart. 45-minute chart is always typically a chart that I look at. The 45 and the 30 is one of my favorites. That's because you can just tell what the overall average is of every 30 minutes. So if you don't know what basically the time frames mean, we'll go break it down, right? So on the 1 minute, you have each candle is forming every single 1 minute. On the 2 minute, each candle is forming every 2 minutes. Each on the 5 minute, each candle is forming every 5 minutes, and then so forth, and on and on and on and on from there. But if you're looking at the 30 minutes, right, each candle is forming every 30 minutes. So this candle has technically 30 candles inside of it on the 1 minute. So I like to see the average and what the average is doing. So if I can go to the higher time frames, that would be ideal for me. So back to the break of the resistance, right? We have a break of resistance. We had some pullback because typically what happens is the market will come back to touch the zone that it broke out of. But what did not happen is it did not come back to touch the zone that it broke out of, and we just continue up. And as you can see, our second confirmation is we had a trend line right here. Anytime we get a nice pullback here, we'll get a trend line drawn so that way we can just follow the market all the way up on the trend, right? So what I'm looking for here is a play to get in, and typically whether it's in the mornings, in the evenings, in the nights, because futures market does open 24/5. It does close on Saturday, but it's open every other day throughout the week, which is great. So what I'm looking for is since I was able to get in on this uptrend slightly, that was not the play that I took overnight. The play that I took was for the market to retrace back to the zone that it came out of. Okay. So first thing I look for is we are looking for a confirmation of a downtrend, right? All of these candles here are 30-minute candles, which means that the overall market for looks like about 2.5 hours was in a downtrend, right? So then we had a slight pullback. Okay. So anytime we have a pullback, that's my indication for me to draw another trend line, typically because that means that the market could essentially bounce off of where it came from, come back down, bounce off, and continue back up. But what did not happen is it broke this trend line, which means that it gave me a indication to get inside of the market. All right, so that's the best thing there. Typically, what we're looking for here is a break of the trend line. We're looking for volume on the way down. Then we're looking for the market to come back to the zone that it broke out of. So that's three different confirmations, even though I don't have a whole bunch of stuff on my chart. I got trend lines, the EMA, and then support and resistance, and that's it. And everything else is just based off of the knowledge that I have that I've gathered from the time that I have been trading, right? So typically what we look for is a break of the trend line. So once it breaks, we can go ahead and delete that trend line. Second thing we're looking for is the market to fall right under the EMA. So as the market is falling right under the EMA, that's another confirmation. From there, right, as soon as it broke that trend line, I am entering the play, right? It fell from here all the way to here. I'm thinking that the market will just continue to come down. I just looked for a pivotal level as the market was coming down here, and then wanted to see which way that the market would go, right? After it broke that first trend line, gave me my confirmation, my EMA right here. Then essentially I said, okay, well, let me just go ahead and set my stop loss. I did not set a take profit. I just followed the profit all the way down, essentially till I went to sleep. Right. And now if you look here at 10 o'clock, this is a PM. This is 10:30 PM, 11:30. Since we are on the 30-minute chart, each one of these candles are forming every 30 minutes. So if you look here, got in a play here, looked for it to break this trend line. Ideally, I know that the market has a gap that it has to fill, a fair value gap. We talk about displacement, we talk about a fair value gap, which means that if the market created displacement on the way up, it creates a fair value gap, which means that the market has to come back to fulfill that gap. And typically, 80 to 90% of the time, the market will come back to fulfill the gap and also touch the zone that it came out of, right? So we had another break here. The EMA was perfect. Our first trend line got broken, and that was my indication to enter the play, right? So now it is about 12:30, 1 o'clock, and the play is just continuing to fall, 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 fall. Right. I woke up in the morning, checked the profits, set in the play for a little bit, and then got out the play and was able to secure a little bit over $3,000. So super cool play. I would suggest just, making sure that you are confident in your trading skills, making sure that you are confident in the way that you set up your plays, right? And now we have another opportunity of entry once the market comes back down to touch this zone, figure out which way these trend lines are going to go, and then we will go from there. Pretty cool way to think about, trading. Trading is always going to be like one of the most important things to me, only because it's changed my life, right? I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years now, doing photography, videography, and I love it. Don't get me wrong, life is great from it. I'm living a great life. I'm thankful. God has blessed me multiple different ways, whether it's trading, whether it's being an entrepreneur. But one thing that I can always tell people, just based off of my journey, is that, never give up. You may take a lot of losses, a lot of losses. I've blown a lot of accounts. I took a lot of losses. I started in stocks trading on Weeble and lost $3,000 within like the first month. Just to be completely transparent, like, and it was, you know, pretty devastating. So I took a break. And I was like, this is not something that I feel like that I want to do, right? So I started to do more research, read more books, watch more videos, look up to other people, find mentors, pay for trading, classes and courses and different things of that nature, and really started to understand the way that the market moved, right? And then it is not essentially the market, then it becomes you, right? You're psychological. Like if you're mentally, physical, emotionally ready to be on the charts, because if you lose a trade and then you want to get back into a trade, right? That's revenge trading, right? You got to have extremely a lot of discipline. One of the best things that I can ever give advice wise when it comes to trading is create a rule book, a rule list, whatever you want to call it. Create your rules, right? So your rules is always going to keep you right in this bubble, which is a great thing. A lot of people, well, why am I staying in the bubble? But the bubble is basically helping you stay consistent, help you stay disciplined, right? If you lose a trade, get out the charts, right? If you are in a trade, build up your consistency, your confidence. Don't get out the trade until it breaks the trend line, right? Even though if you see uh $2,000 in profit, $3,000 in profit, right? You know, follow your profit, right? So there's always a thing called a stop loss, right? Stop losses are help you to prevent from losing money, right? So if you are in profit $2,000, move your stop loss into profit $1,000. So that way it's a risk free trade. So even if you go to sleep, right, the market retraces on you, you're going to be in profit $1,000 no matter what, because the market is going to stop you out at the $1,000, right? Those are just rules that I created for myself, right, to always be profitable, right? So anytime I go into profit on a trade, which majority of my trades, 80%, because I have an 80% win rate, 80% of my trades are always going to be winners, whether it's $100, $200, $300, $400. No matter what it is, you're always going to be able to find a profitable trade as long as you stick with rules that you create for yourself, right? So my strategies are completely different than everybody's strategies, right? I use trend lines, I use EMA, I use support resistance. I look for displacement, I look for fair value gaps, right? All these things, even though my chart is not showing, you know, that specifically, it may just show support resistance and trend lines. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking about everything else. I'm looking for everything else just to give me extra confirmation that the play is going in the direction that I want it to go in. Right. So the overall, what I would take from this video if I were you is just, continue to practice. Look for trend lines, look for confirmation, look for supported resistance, and build your knowledge. And don't be afraid to take risks. You have to take the risk. If you're not taking risks, there's no point of you essentially even trading, because no risk, no reward, right? And you have to put money into the market in order for you to get money in return. Unfortunately, that's the way it works, right? There's no way for you to just 100% win all of your trades, right? You're going to have losses. But my goal for any of my students that I teach or help, or anybody that's in the Discord that I help, is teach them what I went through, right? And then prevent them from making my mistakes. So that way everybody can be profitable. People want to make money in their sleep. People want to get up in the morning and sit on a computer for 2 to 3, minutes, or even 2 to 3 hours at the least, or at the most, to be able to make thousands of dollars, right? Instead of going to work for 8 hours. You know, don't get me wrong, right? I worked at Kroger's, I worked at FedEx, I worked at UPS. Shit, I worked at a banking center. I was job hopping from job hopping to job hopping. Then I became an entrepreneur, and I was just like, I really want to put the work in myself and be able to make, the money that I've always wanted to make without having a cap, right? And when you're an entrepreneur, right, you can make your own prices, you can make your own time, you can make your own schedule, but there are things that comes with it, right? You have to work more for it because it's not given to you. When you're working a 9 to 5, it's given to you, right? They find your clients. If you have clients, or they find their clients, they just pay you an hourly rate, um, to keep you on, you know, their staff, right? And it's like, you got to get up every single morning, you got to do this, you got to do different things. So I say just believe in yourself, right? Take that leap of faith. Make sure that you have some type of income first before you take that leap of faith, because trading is not a quick get rich quick scheme. It's never been. You have to take L's. You gotta know what the market's doing. You gotta know what the news is doing. You gotta look for multiple different things inside of the market, and you have to be ready to be able to trade without without you being in a good mental space. If your psychology is off, if you just had a breakup, whatever it is, don't trade. Don't trade. And I'm just being completely honest. But and it's just, it helps, because I'm telling you this now. I just want you to take it in and make sure you listen, and become the trader you've always wanted to be, but also, set your rules. And then the last and final thing is, a lot of people think that you have to sit on the computer for hours to trade. As you can see, I went to sleep and made over $3,000, right? And then in the mornings, my calls are from 9 to 11. Typically, they don't even last that long. Probably about 10:30 to 10:45, right? An hour and a half or so. And that's all it takes for you to sit here and make hundreds of thousands of dollars inside of the market, right? So let me teach you how to do that. Join the Discord, book a 101, buy the self-paced course, right? And then just go from there, right? This is the next step into your journey. This is the next step into your life of financially free location. You can go to locations. And the good thing about it is you can trade from anywhere in the world, as long as you have a laptop and internet. That's it. So just want to thank y'all for watching this. Felt like I was able to give y'all some good gems when it comes to trading and different things of that nature. But I'll go ahead and wrap this up. Um, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to put it in the comments. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it is at Lunsford, Lunsford trades on Instagram. And then lunsfordtrades.com if you want to book a one-on-one schedule, a free consultation, anything of that nature. I'm just here to help you grow, here to help you make money, and here to help you become a better person when it comes to your finances. I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.